Hey everybody, good afternoon. This is Omar with Community Income Tax. We're getting ready to start this webinar. We're just waiting for a few more attendees to join us. Everyone's coming in here. And if you give us about a couple of minutes, we'll get started.
CIT is the best. The best.
Well, thank you for those kind words, Carter. And good afternoon, everybody. I'm Omar Kanda, the Vice President of Sales and Marketing here at CIT. I also have Alexis Bailey, Director of Customer Relations, here with us today. I want to thank you all so much for joining us this Wednesday afternoon. We're very excited to share the season's program with you and help answer any questions that you may have. Throughout the webinar, feel free to ask any questions in the Q&A box. At the end of the webinar, we'll also be drawing 3 lucky winners from a list of today's webinar registrations. So, however, you have to be in attendance in order to win. So make sure you stay for the whole webinar. So we'll be doing the drawing at the very end. And finally, it's my pleasure to introduce our man here, Carter Dempsey, Vice President of TRS and Director of Sales at Republic Bank, who'll be leading the presentation today. And thank you all for attending. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Mr. Carter to get us started.
Well, thank you, Omar and Alexis. Thanks for having us. We're happy to be working with you and very excited to talk with you today. We have some good news and, certainly feel free to pose your questions. We are starting the next season. The past few seasons have been interesting to say the least. So let's get started and don't be shy. So Republic and CIT have been doing business together a while now. It's a great partnership. And one of the things I love about CIT is they definitely prioritize their clients. You can't say that across every, group out there, but CIT is definitely one of them. So let's get started. So just to kind of go over, normally we give you background on the bank, things along that line. That's not important. Many of you have used Republic for some period of time, so let's get into the nitty gritty. And for the most part, the question and answer period will be paramount because there are actually very few changes this upcoming season. As you notice with this past year, with e-file starting in February as opposed to January, the PreAct variant for a very long period of time, which made it valuable considering that you would normally expect to start e-file in mid to late January versus second week of February. So for our EA, you kind of don't fix what's broken. So all of the changes that are going to occur on the back end for which you do not see. With respects to pricing or the offering, what you will see is that because funding, although very late, was better this season outside of the recovery rebate credit and the prior year earned income credit. Our average approval and average loan should increase, but with no effective increase in price to you or your taxpayers. So the most widely elected advance option is the Easy Advance Plus. Here's the details. As you notice, they shouldn't have changed. The ERO fee for the EA is $45 and the PreAct is $30. The advance ranges from $500 to $6,000. We are staying at a 35.99% APR at 32 days. One of the reasons why this is so important to you, the preparer, is that elsewhere in the marketplace, the days are not fixed. Other banks disclose 25 days, but go up to 45 or 90 days in the calculation. And with how delayed funding was this past year, many taxpayers are being charged a different finance charge from what they were originally disclosed than from when they funded, because funding was so late. So ours is fixed. The price does not change regardless of the amount of time that it takes the taxpayer to fund, which is important. You don't need taxpayers getting upset with you for things that change. You are their trusted confidant and who gets them back their refund each year. So that does set you apart from your competitors. So as you know, with CIT, it's $15 per transmission, and we just reduced the tax prep fees paid at $15. This is the best pricing option out there in the industry. As I said, it's a fixed finance charge. It does not change. And the regular EA starts during the controlled launch or hub testing. So assuming that e-file hub testing is going to start in the third week of January, we hope, knock on wood. And there would be 2 weeks of hub with e-file starting at the end of January. The EA itself, if you don't opt in for the PreAct, will start on the first day of hub testing. If you opt in for the PreAct, then we will start on the 3rd is the day that we're advertising, which is a Monday. Of course, if the market presses for an earlier date, we will not put you at a competitive disadvantage to not honor that and have you start when everybody else starts as well. But as of right now, it is January 3rd. Our EA Plus is available for all disbursement types. We don't limit it. And the taxpayer can choose the amount they're eligible for or below. So for instance, their net refund determines the amount of advance that they're able to get. And the net refund is the refund minus fees. And then they can apply for that, and they either get that amount or get approved for a lesser amount to ensure that they are in fact approved for a loan. January 21st is the deadline to enroll for the EA Plus. So what we find is that many people come in and we'll have some people come in late, for which we can make exceptions, especially if e-file starts late. But we try to cut a deadline to enroll for the loan program because the risk does increase pretty substantially after a certain period of time. But of course, if you run into an issue, let us know. Exceptions can be made, especially for CIT clients. We feel like you guys are family. So shouldn't be any questions on this, same as last year. Just really the start date was the question. The office pay is the other option that you have to provide to your taxpayers. And really, this is a very niched set of preparers that choose this option that feel like they want to advertise that there is no fee to the taxpayer. So the fee is higher to the preparer and the loan amount is less. The risk is a little higher. So the loan amounts only go from $500 to $3,000. Interestingly enough, the average loan for the Easy Advance office pay is relatively high, higher than our competitors. And the fee to the ERO is higher because there is no fee to the taxpayer. So we have about 5 to 10% of our tax preparers that take advantage of this option every year. And primarily it's so they can advertise that they have a loan that has no fee to the taxpayer. So it's $60 ERO fee for the EA, and the PreAct is an additional $30 during the PreAct period. Now, the EA itself does start during the controlled launch if you choose not to opt in for the PreAct, and it is also available for all disbursement types. And as with EA Plus, the taxpayer can choose the amount they're eligible for or below. January 21st is also the deadline to enroll for the EA office pay. So let's talk a little about the PreAct. Okay. The PreAct has essentially been, a lifesaver this past season. You know, we thought e-file was going to start in January. Didn't up start until February 12th. The hub testing was only 3 days. The 9th, 10th, and 11th, right? So the PreAct kept you being able to provide loans out there to taxpayers. Now, with the second stimulus having been received last year by the first date of the PreAct and the third received mid-March, the amount of taxpayers that elected an advance last year went down by almost 30%, and more taxpayers paid out of pocket. So although your volume of taxpayers didn't change materially, those that elected an advance did. Well, with stimulus not likely to come out again this next year, there will be more people electing to get an advance or elect a product through you because they will not have as much cash on hand. So we tend to think that products are going to have a resurgence this next year. So offices that opt in the PreAct have the ability to have the EA proceeds available for the taxpayers every day. January 2nd is what it was last year. We are actually starting on the 3rd. We are hearing that some people are pushing for the 2nd, but keep in mind we're starting that Monday unless we hear that the market is pushing for earlier. We want you to be competitive and have the same. So it's available for the Plus and the Office Pay. There is additional premium of $30. We go up to $3,000 for the Office Pay and $6,000 for the Plus. So keep in mind, your sign is dictated by the option that you choose. So if you choose the Plus, you have a loan that goes up to $6,000. Choose the Office Pay up to $3,000. Again, it's available for all disbursement types. Republic does have the highest average amount, advance amount, and base approval in the industry. I mean, basically, you pay what you get for. Public is not the cheapest loan program in the industry, but our commitment to you for that is that we have the best advance. Your average advance and approval is better, as good, if not better, than anybody else in the industry. Jackson Hewitt, H&R Block, Liberty, Meta, TPG. And part of that is because we are loaning our own money, and we do price it accordingly to have a high average loan. So when you're putting checks out on the street, if someone else isn't using Republic, they are not matching that in terms of the amount of checks or the amount of checks they're putting out. As I said, taxpayers can choose any EA amount they're eligible for or below. So again, the net refund determines the amount they can select. At that time, they could select that amount or any amount beneath that, and then counters are in play as well because we want to ensure that most taxpayers receive an advance. Now, technically, we have to tell you that it's 24 hours, right? Or as little as an hour. But really, with the PreAct, we only have to get the tax return completed and ready to file and the bank application in order to approve a loan. So really, when we start receiving those, on average, checks hit the street within minutes. And we are the fastest at doing this. So every year, we're made aware that Republic has checks on the street before anybody else because of how fast our process works, which means you too, as a preparer associated with CIT and Republic, have checks on the street faster than anybody else. Now, this is really important. It happens every year. Please hear me. If you choose to offer the PreAct, you can opt out at any time. Some preparers will start on the 3rd. And then when hub testing starts, they'll opt out because they're trying to control the amount of fees being charged for the loan to you, right? If you opt out during hub testing, you can't opt back in. Our system can't handle going back and forth. The advantage of our PreAct being available through hub testing is hub testing is intermittent. It's typically only parts of the day, a few days a week, and then not nights and weekends, and certainly, up to Martin Luther King. So you can take advantage of the PreAct to your liking for your need. Larger offices typically leave it on through, but if you're trying to control your expenses, when hub testing starts, you can opt out. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter how much we like you, how great an office you are, we can't opt you back in if you opt out once you've started offering. And one of the things that makes ours so much better than the other banks is that we have the exact same taxpayer underwriting criteria for the PreAct as the PostAct. So whether applying for a PreAct or a PostAct, we don't differ the approval or underwriting criteria. It's the same. And one of the reasons why this is better is you hear the other banks touting their approval rate or their average loan. And what they're doing is they're skewing out one of their free options, or they're skewing out the PreAct from the PostAct because they do have different underwriting criteria. So nobody's PreAct approval rate is as high as Republic's because our underwriting criteria is exactly the same. So what you'll notice is that not only are you putting checks out on the street earlier, but you're putting them out more frequently for a higher amount during the PreAct period. That should attract more taxpayers to you that didn't use you as well last year. Also, if you've had a taxpayer for 2 years, We use up to 3 years of taxpayer history in order to determine the funding for the taxpayer. And that's typically when your approval rate and average loan begin to cap out. So every year it increases. In the third year, you typically cap out, but it gets pretty high. We have people whose approval rate's in the high 80% for over $2,000. It does take some time, though, as we do have to build some history with the taxpayer. Okay. Wrap. This is very important, and we recognize that even more so this year than years previous, arguably last year as well, that you need money to help your business keep running. With PATH Act, having the legal expectation that refunds cannot be released with earned income credit prior to February 15th means that you have a lot of taxpayers not funding. If they're not paying you out of pocket, that you're doing a lot of these waiting to be paid. So for our receivables assistance, we provide you up to 50% of your tax prep fees once the return's acknowledged at the beginning of the filing season. It basically starts on the second day of hub testing because we get the acts the first day, start releasing money the second. The opt-in is going to start on November 1st. We're going to start releasing money the second day of hub testing. We do up to $250,000 per office. It's only a 2% fee, and repayment starts once funding begins. Will help ease cash flows at the beginning of tax season, and first-time offices can get it, but you're limited to $300 that you can receive per taxpayer in your first season. So if your tax prep fee is $600 or above, you're limited to $300 per just in your first year. Now, a couple things that have changed this season. One, we are delaying the collection to the full start of wrap. So normally we went to 100% collection a little earlier to when the PATH Act funding occurred. We've actually extended to not go to 100% collection on wrap till right before PATH Act begins to fund, because typically PATH Act is when you've paid off all of that amount. So we wanted to get that as close to as possible so you're receiving as much money as you can from that initial flow of refunds that occur in late January, early February. We felt like that was important to help you better this season. Also, very important to keep in mind, the amount of wrap that you're eligible for is determined by your fees from the previous season. If when you go to opt in for wrap, if that amount does not look large enough for this year, please ensure that you're calling us up and saying, hey, listen, I'm only seeing 50,000 per wrap, and I really think that I'm going to be closer to the 100,000 this year. I've had a lot of interest in my business, and I think I'm going to grow. We can change that, and you go back and reaccept the terms to be eligible up to that amount, really up to 250,000 if needed. But please do so before you hit your wrap cap, because if you hit your wrap cap, the returns that are acknowledged in that period before it's raised will not be counted towards wrap in the interim until it's raised, right? So just be aware that if it does not appear to be the correct amount, let us know and we'll get that increased for you. Okay. Now, I know Margie's on this call, so I'm going to give Margie some props because Margie was very clear there were some things that needed to change with Prewrap, as have Omar and Alexis asked several years. Well, guess what? This season, we did it. So there's a couple things with Prewrap that are really going to work in your favor this season. So the opt-in is on November 1st, as it is with Wrap. We'll start providing money on November 9th. It says every Friday, ending on December 28th, for ERO's help get prepared this season. Well, not so anymore. We are actually releasing wrap twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. So if you didn't finish everything on Friday, like your beneficial ownership or accept the amount, we will release money the following Tuesday. You won't have to wait a whole week. So the opt-in will go through November 1st through December 21st. It is $500 to $40,000 per office. CIT has a unique arrangement with Republic that offices that have as little as 50 funded RTs can receive Prewrap, which is unique to CIT, and it does not exceed more than 10% of your prior fee revenue. Any prior experience with Republic Bank or another bank confirmed can get you Prewrap. You basically have to confirm the amount of fees in your bank products, and the Prewrap origination fee is 3%. The advances are paid through tax preparation once fees begin, and if you're a brand new office to Republic, then you are limited to 20,000 your first season. And here's where the Margie shout out comes. So for many of you, many of the clients on this call, one of the big issues last year is when you went to select your amount, you could only select the minimum of the tier, right? So you could only select the 3,000, 5,000, 20,000, or 40,000. You could not select the amounts in between that got you up to the cap of each tier. Based on Omar and Alexis's feedback and Margie's desire to do right by you guys and convincing me of the same, you will now be able to go in and select up to the max of the tier as opposed to having call in and say, I want more than this, and having them capture that information to then have underwriting change it for you to go back to accept it. This year, when you go opt into Prewrap, you will be able to select the maximum amount of the tier from the dropdown. If you have any issues with this, let us know, but this is our commitment to you to help you by making a little more money available to you and a little less work in requesting that money. And again, Wrap will not kick in if you've received Prewrap until twice the amount of fees are ACT from your Prewrap. So if you got $5,000 in Prewrap, until you have $10,000, $10,001, you will not receive you'll receive your first 50 cents, right? So every year people call in and say, my Wrap hasn't kicked in. All the time what it is, they've received Prewrap and they haven't had enough ACT fees for the Wrap to kick in yet. So just keep in mind, if you get Prewrap, twice the amount of fees acknowledged from your Prewrap amount before Wrap kicks in. All right? But definitely if you speak to her, thank Margie, because I think that it'll make your life a lot easier to be able to select the max amount this year. And that money going out twice a year certainly helps as well, or twice a week. Oh, yep, there you go. Money goes out twice a week and can select max amount from dropdown. So our disbursement options. We have checks, direct deposit, and net spend prepaid card. Okay. So for our checks, the check stop verification with our bank logo and contact information is easy verification 24/7. We do have a site which you can do this in an automated service. If the check's already been verified, it will roll to an agent. You print checks in your office so your customers can pick them up with safety and convenience. You also have the ability to lay that on the busier days in the larger offices. Talk a little about that later. And then taxpayers can receive notifications when checks are ready to print. Again, can be delayed up to 24 hours. That's very important to use. Too many times, the average taxpayer calls 3 times per disbursement, and you need a little assistance. So please enable the text notifications for the taxpayer to receive. So they say, do I have a check ready yet? Did you get the text? No? Well, then you don't have a check ready. It's pretty good to get them accustomed to. We do have multiple checks cashing options, and Wells Fargo will continue to cash our checks. But based on the amount of volume that we had people using Wells Fargo, we have discontinued the Wells Fargo check stock for the 2021-2022 season. Please shred any unused Wells Fargo check stock for this upcoming season. The direct deposit, interestingly enough, was the largest elected disbursement method of the 2021 season. It was up to 72%. Obviously, with COVID over the past couple seasons, being in front of people has been more of a challenge, so direct deposit was used more. Now, the ACH process can take up to 1 to 4 days. Really, the truth is, credit unions are very fast. Normal banks, if we send it on a Tuesday, it's in their account on Wednesday, usually, and we try to have the money go to be effective in the same day they would have received it from the IRS. So we send out the notification the day prior to have it in their account the same day they otherwise would. But again, if it goes out on a Friday, they're not going to see it before Monday unless it's a credit union. So keep in mind. The net spend prepaid Visa is being used more. One of the reasons why it's such a more widely elected option is because of how fast taxpayers are getting their disbursement on the net spend prepaid Visa. So we are actually loading the net spend prepaid Visa from the time we receive the ACH file, which means that it's sometimes 6 to 7 days sooner. Now, keep in mind, we got a lot of calls from you this past year of, well, I saw my taxpayer got their refund, but I didn't get my fees. Well, for NetSpend prepaid Visa cards, because we're loading from the ACH file, their card is being loaded from prior to when the money has been received. But your fees are being sent in conjunction with the monies having been received. So if you have any NetSpend prepaid Visa cards, just keep in mind that your taxpayer may have that load, several days before the fees have actually been dispersed to you. And also new for this year, you can use old card stock that were not used last season. Listen, we had a lot of you that were like, I don't have my card yet. My clients like the card. I need to get the card so I can get these entered in the beginning. We are actually allowing old card stock to be used that was not used last season for this reason. It should help you if you have some cards to get some of that started right out of the gates, okay? Check cashing locations haven't changed. Wells Fargo, there's the amounts, Republic Bank. We also have a check cashing agreement that you can establish with local banks. A lot of tax preparers like to use that. And if you go into the TIC, you can request that via there from the forms. Walmart's checks from 1,000. Oops, sorry, it looks like there's a zero missing. My bad. $1,000.01, 7,500 can be cash for 8. Checks less than 1,000 cost 4 or 1% if less than 300. I apologize. That's not $100.01. That's $1,000.01. Forgive me. Any questions at this point?
Yeah, Carter, we've got a couple questions. So to start, are we raising the EA max like other banks?
The EA max, you mean in terms of the $6,000?
I believe so.
Okay, no, but let me tell you why that's not a bad thing for you, right? The $6,000, really, the percentage of taxpayers that actually receive that, as you all know, is not very high. So first of all, those that are eligible, it's typically a lower percentage based on what the average refund amount being closer to $3,400, one. Two, the amount of taxpayers that actually select that is low. More than 25% of the time, taxpayers select an amount less than what they're eligible for. But here's why it really matters to you. Republic has the highest average loan by a mile to the other banks. So they may have something on their sign that shows a higher amount, but that does not mean that the taxpayer on average is receiving an amount anywhere near what they're receiving through you. So really, is that an advantage to the taxpayer to have an amount they see that's potential if they never get it? And if their average loan ends up being less, one of the bank's average loan was closer to $700, right? Ours is closer to $1,700. And the other one had a decent approval rate, but their average loan was a full $500 to $600 less than ours. So really the value is that you want more of your taxpayers walking out with the most money most of the time. The highest number on the sign does not necessarily breed confidence with the taxpayer if they're not receiving it. And not only that, insult to injury, they're receiving such a small amount in response, like $250 or $150 when they applied for that amount. So good question. What's the other question?
Do the banks still share info?
Banks do not share information for any reason other than cross collections on Prewrap. So if someone takes money from one bank and doesn't use it and uses another bank, the only information shared between banks is for who may have received money from one bank to see that they're using another bank for cross collections on Prewrap. And there is a PreAct database now for which one, and this is industry wide, even amongst the big boys and girls, the national brands, that if someone comes into an office and gets in a PreAct, they go into a database. So if they go try to apply someplace else, it is seen that they've already applied someplace else. So people aren't trying to get loans from more than one place in the PreAct period. But outside of that, banks do not share information. That's a good question too.
Perfect. And next we have, is Republic going to let us know a few days early when a taxpayer's returns are being deposited?
So not a few days earlier, but we are going earlier with what we called our advanced notification. So one of the things that changed, and I really appreciate whoever asked that question. One of the things that changed is Republic used to release checks at 4 p.m., RT checks at 4 p.m. So we made that information available in the morning of the day for what was going to be on that day. What we found is that when we changed the checks to be available as of 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time as opposed to the 4 p.m., that notification was coming in conjunction with the checks being released, and it really wasn't an advance notification anymore. So we're doing it the day previous. So the day previous, you should see what's coming for the next day for that precise reason. But we really don't want to do more than a day, because the problem is it gets very confusing. If we did it a few days sooner, then taxpayers start to run together and it becomes difficult. We also have a very specific limitation with, although the Treasury may let us know days in advance, the state is usually the day or the day before. So it would be very confusing, because you'd have some where the Treasury has let you know that taxpayers are coming significantly in advance, but the State Department of Revenue does not give you much advance notification. They either send the money in conjunction with the file, or they do it just the day previous. So we really can't go back more than a day. That's a good question. Well, these are good questions, Alexis. What else you got?
Perfect. And it looks like next one, I believe, is in reference to net spend. Did they fix their text issue from last year, as there was a few false text alerts that went out?
Yes. So, gosh, man, people are asking great questions today. So what happened is they had a merge of a file from not a subsequent, but a previous file from when the text message had gone out. So taxpayers receiving text messages that their refund was ready to pick up. Now, most taxpayers were aware that they'd already received their refund to know it was an error. But other taxpayers did insist that they got the text, so they had money coming, and they lit you guys up, and we apologize for that. We did get with net spend on this, and this has been resolved. It's also one of the circumstances associated with why that old card stock will now be available to you as well. But yes, that issue has been resolved, and we very much apologize on behalf of net spend, as that was annoying to say the least. We got the same calls you did, and there's nothing worse than a taxpayer that's already been paid and you've been paid coming back and bothering you again about, hey, they told me I have money, why don't I have money? Well, your state and your Fed both funded. What are you expecting? Well, I don't know, I got this, So, and with stimulus, it did make it more confusing, because there was more money coming than just the state and the Fed, right? So yes, it has been resolved, and we apologize profusely on behalf of net spend.
Perfect. And it looks like next question is there an advance option where customer pays and the office doesn't?
So we have a customer pay option. Unfortunately, that option is extremely low priced, and it requires very high performance amongst the offices to be eligible for. But based on CIT having the absolute lowest price in the industry for their offering to you, what often happens with the customer pay is, because the cost is so low, it doesn't really cost the average loss associated with the loan. The RT fee came into play. So because the normal RT fee in a higher priced RT program is $39.95 and $10, whereas CIT only charges $15 per transmission, there was not the ability to build a customer pay program within CIT to not have enough risk to create the issue in offering it. So unfortunately, it's just too risky to offer when you have such a reasonably priced program like CIT to offer, and that's not something that we have been able to figure out. Unfortunately, losses sustained in the customer pay program are much more impactful than the EA Plus and office pay, so it's not something that we can offer through CIT at this time. And it's really not due to fault of theirs, because CIT has the lowest cost option there. So when you think about the difference in cost between the EA and like the customer pay, when you incorporate in what the CIT cost is, you are still ultimately paying less than what the customer pay option would be, because there's still a PreAct fee. But the EA fee is charged to the taxpayer, to where you do still really have about a break even in the cost being charged because of CIT's lower fee of the $15 per transmission, right? It's already $24.95 less per RT for this reason, right? But unfortunately, it's not something that we can offer, because it's just priced so low, we can't offset the risk, unfortunately. That's a good question too. We're looking at it. We're trying to crack the nut, but unfortunately it's challenging. And by the way, CIT has asked us several times as well, so they have your best interest in mind. It's just not something where we've gotten to yet.
Perfect. And it looks like we've got 2 or 3 more questions. Will Wells Fargo still be available for check cashing, but we won't have Wells Fargo check stock, correct?
Yes, so we still have the check cashing agreement with Wells Fargo. It's just not Wells Fargo check stock. So they will honor Republic Bank checks in Wells Fargo with the check cashing agreement. Now, if you haven't done business with that Wells Fargo before, the first thing you do before the season starts is go into a branch that's where most of your taxpayers will be going if near you, and just make sure that they reference the check cashing agreement with Republic, just so when it starts, if they haven't received Republic Bank check stock before, that they're being made aware that they do have that agreement. Sometimes within these branches, if they haven't received it before, they're not aware. They need to go refer to the book. It is in the book. But yes, Wells Fargo does still have a check cashing agreement with Republic.
Perfect. And is there a higher rate of approval for office pay over customer pay?
No. Our approval rate is median across all of our programs. What's actually interesting about the office pay is office pay has an extraordinarily high average loan and approval based on the max loan amount, right? So EA Plus goes up to $6,000. Customer pay only goes up to $3,000. But the average approval and average loan is still very high in the office pay relative to the max loan only going up to $3,000. Keep in mind, the average taxpayer's refund's only $3,400, right? So you don't have as many taxpayers that are in the higher range, especially with the advanced child tax credit, which we'll talk about at the end of these next slides. With 35 million taxpayers having received this and only 1.8 million opting out, half of their child tax credit has been received, April through December, for the other half to be on the return, which will lower many people's net refund because of this, and therefore the amount of the loan that they would be eligible for. We'll get into that a little bit later. One of the things that CIT and Republic bring to you is some industry news as well. So, good
Perfect.
question. What else you got?
It looks like this is our last question, and we'll go ahead and keep on going. I checked Republic's website every day to see checks or direct deposits are available, and occasionally, even when the answer was no on the website, I still had 1 or more checks to print that were not included on website reports. Has this been corrected?
I can't.
Carter, are you there?
I can hear you now. You cut out on me. I go to Republic's website every day to check, and I lost you there. I couldn't hear anything else.
No worries. Let me read it again. I go to Republic's website every day to see if checks or direct deposits are available. On occasion, even when the answer is no on the website, I still have 1 or more checks to print that were not included on the website report. Has this been corrected?
Yeah, so basically those, and the person would have to respond back to say, when that occurs, it's typically states. States will not send an advance notification in conjunction with the money, so we don't have the notification. They'll send the money without a notification of what's coming. So literally the check is released in real time without any notification having come from the state. Now, if that ever happens with the Treasury, we need to know, because we always receive advance notification. But that should really only ever be if it's a state, because some states will just send the money and not the file. So we can't really give you a notification. We just release the check. All of your notifications come from the notifications we receive either from the State Department of Revenues or the Treasury, right? So Treasury does it pretty much without fail. The states don't. So that's usually where that circumstance exists. So if it's a situation where it occurred with the Treasury, please let Alexis know, and she can get that to me to investigate your situation in detail after this. But if it's the states, it's not something we can correct. That's actually on the State Department of Revenue not sending a file.
Perfect. And then go ahead. I think let's do some more slides and we'll let some more questions pour in.
Okay, so this is one of the things that Omar asked me to add last season and Alexis asked me to add last season. We won't spend a whole lot of time on it. If you're not in New York, Illinois, Connecticut, California, Texas, basically the states you'll see on the next slide, don't worry about it. And it is where the office is located, where there's a requirement with your state to be registered, okay? So one of the things that Republic does is that in order to ensure your full compliance with all applicable laws and regulations for responsible business practices, we provide the links on page 28 of our program guidelines that shows you for the place where you need to register with the state if you're offering it's either the loan or in some instances the RT. Now, if you're aware of any other states that we don't have on here, although you do need to do that, we only adhere to the ones for which we're aware of and can find by reviewing publicly available information. So you do have oral disclosures. Those print from your software, right? And these are things where there's just particular items that you have to say if you're located in the state to the taxpayers, which you're accustomed to. There are written disclosures, which are also provided through your software for these states, where you give it to the customer with the other bank documents that print from your software. Sometimes they're in a weird font. Each state has some unique situations for what they require. And then there are some posting requirements for which Republic will send you posters in your supply shipment based on where the office is located that you have posted for taxpayers to see. Okay, so you have oral, written, and disclosure, oral, written, and posting requirements for which the oral and written are printed from your software, and the posted requirements are actually provided by Republic. Okay. Now the next one is, here's the states in which you have to register, depending on the circumstance. Some are just for RTs, some are for EAs. And then if you're in California, obviously CTEC. If this is on page 28 of the program guidelines, you click on the link, it'll take you out there. We do verify the license through information that they provide to verify that it's been received. If you're offering the loan and you have not received your registration, if it's your first year with Republic, you will continue to offer the loan until the second to last week of February. And if we cannot confirm the license, then Republic would cut off from the loan until proof was provided. If you used Republic last year and you offer the loan up to the end of February and you never provided your license or taken off loans, in order to be able to offer the loan for this upcoming season, you will need to provide proof of registration. And it never hurts to send that sooner than later. We were a little more reasonable with this last year because with everything that went on, there were some of the states that were shut down to not be able to register. If we get any notification that any of that exists this year, we will make exceptions as well. We really want to try to work with you to make this as painless as possible. And then again, page 28 of the program guidelines has more details on this. Okay. So one of the things that we really like to talk about with our support, a lot of you have already been using Republic, so are aware of what it is that we do. There's a couple things that are very important for CIT. Every CIT office is listed in as a VIP with Republic. So you guys automatically go to tier 2 and you're handled to some degree separately from our normal population. We want to ensure that you get the best answers and get them quickly. Now, with COVID, it was a little bit of a challenge because people couldn't be in the office. So this past season was challenging with, in and out of the office and remote employees. People are vaccinated now. There will be more of a in-person presence. We have addressed that. But for CIT, you are all VIPs with Republic. You're actually tagged as a VIP in Republic. We do have the mobile TRS app that's available for Android and iPhone. I always encourage people to download this because it shows you for what's coming each day and gives you an idea of how busy your day is going to be. RepublicTaxpayer.com is a great opportunity to send your taxpayers to check on the status of their refund, because you can't, if you have 100 taxpayers and they call 3 times per disbursement and they both got a Fed and a state, right? Well, then that's 300 times 300, 900 for the Fed, and another 900 state. That's 1,800 individual calls for 300 taxpayers. You don't always have time for that based on what you're trying to accomplish in a day. Please use republictaxpayer.com. Now, the taxpayer text updates are important and can be configured through the TIC. We do it for the checks, direct deposits, and the NetSpend prepaid Visa. Obviously, you're aware, NetSpend sent more than they should last year. But the most important thing that has really helped us with eliminating the amount of time associated with processing is all our forms went online this past year. So when you go onto the TIC and go into the forms, you can apply an electronic signature and upload those for a faster turnaround. You initially get a confirmation that it's been uploaded, and then you'll get confirmation once it's been completed. Just a couple important things to remember. If you're sending in a check to have it reissued, please make sure void is written across the face of the check. And also, please ensure that the check number actually matches up with the check that you're trying to void and reissue. And if it doesn't, provide an explanation as to why. Sometimes you print a check for a different taxpayer with the reported check number than the check you're actually providing. That happens, and it makes sense. We just need to know, okay? And then, as Margie likes to say, the Eero Forum is great to go out there and find out things that are happening in the industry, not just with Republic, and we have a lot of people that communicate there. So if you go to republicrefund.com, which we call the TIC, you can log on and you have access to these items, okay? So before we get into the last bit of questions and kind of wrap up, wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the things in the industry and some important news that you need to be aware of, okay? So the Advanced Child Tax Credit, it will be the EIP of 2022, okay? If what they receive on the letter 6419 and is otherwise put onto the schedule 8812, which there's a draft on irs.gov right now, does not match, it will delay the refund 6 to 8 weeks. I told you 35 million taxpayers have received this. Only 1.8 million have opted out, which means a large percentage of your taxpayers are going to receive an advanced child tax credit, okay? There is something on the floor now to extend this for up to 4 years. But as of right now, what you need to be aware of is that if they receive those payments monthly, they could receive, well, your tax preparers, of course, you're aware, they could receive half of their child tax credit issued to them monthly in payments and the other half filed on their return. It will reduce their refund. And many taxpayers have received so much money, they're simply not aware that it was necessarily for child tax credit. There are many, surprisingly, I've talked to them. So that letter 6419, we have discussed with the IRS, and there will be an electronic option for the taxpayer to be able to verify. So much like we live on Where's My Refund as preparers and bank product providers, which are otherwise used by taxpayers normally, we will help provide you the information that's the medium for you to be able to check on what they would have received on their letter 6419 so you can do the 8812 properly. Because what you don't want to have happen is have hundreds or tens or hundreds or thousands of taxpayers delayed in receiving their refund because they came in and said, oh, I didn't get any child tax credit money, or not providing you the correct amount. In delaying their refund, that will cause an undue amount of issues for you and a timely funding for you to be paid your fees or paid off loans or whatever else. Additionally, IP pins, they are continuing to be issued, and if you cannot file with the IP PIN at the time that you file the return does have to be mailed. Just make sure that if you're mailing a return to have funded through the bank, that you initially created a transmission as a bank product. So when you mail that return routed to Republic Bank, the EFIN plus the social with a digit 2 this year in the DAN, and the RTN is in the program guidelines, that you did initially transmit it as a bank product so CIT can send that bank app when we get notification we're going to receive the money, because from the PreAct period, we do loans on just the tax return and the bank application. There is no ACT. So there are returns that you have to mail off, and you still want to ensure you get paid from the bank. Just make sure you create it as a bank product first so that file exists to be sent. Outside of that, there is some other information that we will be releasing in an industry news email to you all about things that affect you. The IRS is releasing some guidance into keeping all of the EIP letters for the money received and the child tax credit. And for the 1040X, if the 1040X was mailed in a previous season, or excuse me, if the return was mailed, then the 1040X can be electronically filed this year. And one of the big questions, where the answer unfortunately is still no, 1040X can still not be done as a direct deposit. So for 1040Xs, you will not be able to do those as bank products because they will be mailed. But having mailed the return, you will now be able to do a 1040X electronically, which is an improvement. And then there will be some more access for